Hey guys, what's going on? It's Ash here coming at you today with first-time guest, well, on voice at least, Johnny, and we are going to go over his insanely fast Graveyard Cycle deck, talk about why it's good in the meta. We're going to get to know Johnny a little bit too, but first off, Johnny, how you doing, man?
Good, man. Thanks for having me.
No problem, man. It's a pleasure to have you. I've done a spotlight on one of your previous decks, but didn't have you actually on the channel to describe it, and I actually find it's better to have you on through voice. That way I can just like kind of pepper you with questions throughout the video, and hopefully the audience gets more from it as well. So first off, while we take a look at your deck here, I have it up on my screen as well. Before we get into it, why don't we tell us a little bit about yourself? Who are you? When did you find out that you were good at Clash Royale? And what's your favorite type of deck to play?
Well, I started playing Clash of Clans, and then I switched to Clash Royale when it came out. I'm from Ohio. I'm in college. I'm 21 years old. So I've recently been playing a lot of Clash Royale, so I've gotten a little bit better over the past couple months.
Oh, nice.
But yeah, so
you played it casually at first, and then you kind of just started picking up steam, and once you figured out you were, pretty good. You can see you have a ton of challenge cards won.
Yeah.
Over 100,000, not bad at all, man.
Yeah, the game's growing a lot, so as the game's been growing, I've been playing a lot more. So
awesome.
A lot more competitive stuff to get into.
Yeah, did you ever play any like other competitive games, or are you ever hardcore into any game before Clash Royale, or?
I've always been into mobile games. I've never gotten into any console gaming or PC gaming really, so I've pretty much stuck with Supercell games so far.
Nice. Yeah, I have a similar story myself. I played like old school console games growing up and stuff, and then I got into like MMOs a little bit, and I got like so addicted back in like the late 90s, early 2000s. And then I was like, I'm done with games. I'm done with video games. And then, like 10 years passed. I played like a little Halo and stuff here and there with friends, like at parties and stuff, like real, nerd gatherings. And and then besides that, though, I was kind of out until then I found Clash of Clans. And you pick up a mobile game and you're like, this couldn't harm me in any way. I can't get addicted to a silly mobile game. And then next thing you know, you're playing 24/7, Yeah, exactly. But, how about this deck, though? I mean, we've seen a lot of Graveyard decks. Graveyard's always been popular since it came into the game, but we haven't seen a deck this cheap that's really effective. Talk about why it works in the meta, or why it works and why it works specifically in the meta right now.
Well, I think the problem with Graveyard decks before this balance change was you needed like at least 2 or 3 spells to go along with it. Mm-hmm. So like you would need Zap and Fireball or Freeze. With this balance change, it's just made Poison so like generic. So Poison can pretty much take care of anything they place to defend it, and then it lasts long. So like they can't play like before they would play Skarmy, you'd have to zap it, then they play something else. Poison lasts for 8 seconds, so they can't just keep placing more troops in it.
Yeah, it deals more damage, so it can in one tick, it can kill the whole Skarmy, versus before it took a little while. Yeah. All right. Well,
I really think.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Sorry.
I really think Skarmy's dead because of the poison thing. So that's really been a big buff to Graveyard.
Yeah, for sure. Even like any kind of cycle deck, really, where you'd rely on Skeleton Army, it feels like even like Hog Cycle. Just the fact that, like you said, Poison kills it in 1 second, 1 tick. I mean, you can actually use it in a variety of different situations to combat really any type of Skarmy usage. So I think you're right. I think Skarmy, not only do they remove 1 skeleton and add it back to the skeletons, but they also, hopefully it's not totally RIP Skarmy, but I guess time will tell. But, want to hop into the first replay here against Ali from Hammers Esports?
Yeah, let's go.
All right, I'm gonna give it a 3 count. 3, 2, 1, and I'll press play. And basically, just walk us through your mindset about what you're thinking. How do you feel, first of all, about this starting hand you have here?
It's a defensive starting hand, so I can't play Graveyard at the start. So I kind of have to react to what he plays. He plays a Princess, and I play a Mega Minion. I'm still kind of just trading off with him, getting a feel for what kind of deck he has.
And if you did have Graveyard in your starting hand, would you have use it right off the bat?
I probably would wait for him to drop a troop, and then if it's say it's like a 3 or 4 elixir troop, I would play Ice Golem Graveyard the opposite side.
Okay.
Or if I had poison in hand, I would drop the graveyard on the same side and then just poison whatever he drops.
Okay. So now you got you did your first little graveyard poison combo. Are you always well? Obviously, you're just gonna wait to see what they counter with in terms of when you use poison versus when you just solo graveyard it.
Yep. I always like to see what their first graveyard's kind of just to get a feel what they're gonna defend with, and based on that, I'll plan on how I'm gonna do the next graveyards accordingly.
Okay, so once you saw what he's coming at you with in this match here, so what's your game plan right now? You take a little bit of damage to that left tower. Where's your head at right now?
Yeah, so he has 3 win conditions. He has Mortar, Hog, and Miner. So I have to be very careful with overcommitting, because if I overcommit, he can punish me very quickly. You see he already has a lead because he kind of surprised me with that Hog.
Now, I noticed that you're playing Graveyard in this deck, like, just all by itself. You're not necessarily waiting to combo it with a tank, like a glass tank, like the Ice Golem in the lane or anything like that. So is that basically how you know, it is a Graveyard cycle deck, meaning that you cycle the Graveyard pretty often. So is that basically what you're trying to do here?
Yeah, one thing I had my Ice Golem out of cycle there, but another thing is the troops that he has to defend, he has to place them right in the graveyard area of damage. So like he's defending with Spear Gobs and Electro Whiz. So I know he's gonna place those right where I would place my poison. So that's a decent trade. And I was ahead in elixir right there. So yeah.
Yeah, and there it is. This is gonna be a nice little push for you right here.
Yeah, and the poisons in this game, I got really good value out of the poisons because I was killing his Spear Gobs and his Electro Whiz.
Absolutely. And poison really works against pretty much all the counters. I mean, maybe not so great against execute. What do you do if you go against like Executioner? You just
I just poison the Executioner, and well, it's a graveyard cycle deck, so I can get like 5 to 6, 7 graveyards in a game.
That's
so
crazy.
Yeah, I know, right? Even if he does play the Executioner, I can still get like 300, 400 damage along with a poison. That's like even like worst case scenario. So if I do that 5 or 6 times a game, I'm gonna get the tower.
Wow, that was really well played there, especially taking down Ali, who's like a challenge freaking monster, you know?
Yeah, he's good.
Yeah, so very well done. And you can see just how effective that deck can be. And people aren't expecting necessarily, when they go against someone who plays Graveyard, they're not expecting a Graveyard cycle deck. They're not expecting, like you said, to drop that many Graveyards on them in one match. So you can kind of take people off guard, I imagine, playing a deck like this.
Yeah, with this kind of deck, even if they have a hard counter to Graveyard, you're going to catch them 1 or 2 times where they just can't defend it. So it's going to eventually you're just going to get them down.
Sweet. Okay, want to go into the next replay here?
Yep.
This one's against a beatdown deck. Sweet. So I'm just going to go ahead and let it roll right now. So we're just starting out here. And again, if you can just walk us through your mindset, I'll just like hand off the floor to you for a bit and just start us out here. What's kind of going through your mind?
So this one, I actually get really lucky with my starting hand. I drop Mega Minion in the back, and then I'm hoping that I can get Graveyard after my Mega Minion. See, a Graveyard comes up next. So I can drop my Ice Golem and then drop a beginning Graveyard. And he drops Executioner, and then you'll see I have a Poison. And so the Poison will take the Executioner down to about a little less than half health, which makes it a lot easier to defend on the counter push.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you see I still get about 400 damage there, even with the Executioner. So this guy has Giant, so I'm going to pull the Giant to the left side, and then I'll just take out the trailing troops with my Ice Golem or Mega Minion. Dropping both of those together a lot of times. You'll see that later in the game.
And here, after you successfully defended, you're going right back into the mindset of cycling back. Well, you've already cycled back to your Graveyard, and you're just going to do another Graveyard push, kind of rinse and repeat at this point?
Yep, and this deck is awesome because in double elixir time, I can pretty much just keep constantly dropping Graveyards. It's pretty ridiculous.
Yeah, it is pretty crazy. And this is I think this is your 10th win in this, or 11th win rather, in this Grand Challenge that you just played. So you've been playing the deck for only a few days, right?
I've been playing for a day.
Yeah, because Poison was just buffed, so yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I really think Graveyard's going to become the meta.
Yeah.
We might even start seeing Val just because it's going to be so OP.
Yeah, that's true. And Val can withstand, as like Executioner, she can withstand poison a bit better than most of the traditional counters. So, yeah, man, you're definitely kind of tearing it up with this deck. What about are there any really common mistakes with this deck? Maybe I think one of the obvious things might be back in the first match when you were cautious that he had 3 win conditions, so you weren't over-committing on your pushes. Besides stuff like that, is there something that people can really do wrong with this deck?
Common mistakes that can be made with this deck are when you're playing beatdown decks and say they drop a giant in the back and you don't save your graveyard for when they play the giant. So you're forced to just drop your little troops on the same side as the giant, and then they can just make a big push because they don't have to defend your graveyard. So when playing a big beatdown deck, you want to be able to play graveyard when they drop their tank, so that way they can't fortify their tank and get a big push on you, because if they get a big push on you, then you could be in trouble.
Okay, so whenever you see them drop their big tank, you're going to go ahead and drop your graveyard.
Yep, exactly.
Okay.
And because they're just playing down an elixir at that point. So.
Now, do you ever switch lanes in a situation like that, or if you already have a tower down, do you just stick with it no matter what lane they're coming at you in?
In this game, you saw I already had the 1 tower down, so I wanted to sit to the same side. But against a big beatdown deck, you do want to go opposite sides, so that way their trailing troops are going to be on the opposite side of the giant.
Okay.
Or
so
the golem or whatever.
Okay, well, that was another good win. I'm just going to go ahead and put on... Actually, that was your 12th win there. I'm going to go ahead and put on the last one. And this is against that really popular Hog Cycle deck that I think I just did a video on a few days ago with Sushi Pepe as well. I think Marcel P has popularized it as well. And we'll see how you deal with this deck. So I'm going to press watch now. And again, we'll just start rolling here. So defensively... against, I do want to talk a little bit more about those switching lanes and when to do it and when not to do it. So, like, you already had that tower down to maybe like around a little over 1,000 HP, so you kind of stuck with the graveyard there. Is there a mark that you feel comfortable with as far as the opposing tower's HP, not switching lanes, or does it just depend on your opponent, or how do you kind of gauge that?
Okay, so say they have a hard counter to graveyard. Let's say they have archers or minions. If they drop those on the opposite side, like planning for a graveyard, like if you drop, say you drop a Mega Minion in the back on one side, and then they're planning for the graveyard on that side, they drop their archers or something. Then I might drop Ice Golem Graveyard on the other side and catch them off guard. That's a good example. Trying to think of any other examples. I can't really. I mean, yeah, just going with the flow, kind of. Against this hog deck, the skeleton buff with the 4 skeletons has really made cycle decks a lot more popular and a lot more viable. So this hog deck is going to become more popular, along with this graveyard cycle stuff. So
yeah, that 4th skeleton is definitely serious stuff. In terms of, because it's only 1 skeleton, but it's also 1 more swing from a mini P.E.K.K.A. or an elite barbarian or a P.E.K.K.A. or whatever you're trying to distract. So definitely feel a love in the buff to the skeleton again.
Yeah, same.
So you did switch lanes there.
Yep. I forget if I continue with that lane actually. Let's see what I do.
Yeah.
But I was playing this deck with Inferno Tower before Cannon, and I was playing so many of these hog decks that I just switched to Cannon, and I can still defend a giant deck and golem deck, so it's working well.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if we have now. Do you make any changes based on either if you're using this deck for ladder or for tournament level standards, or do you recommend the same cards either way?
Hog is really popular on ladder, so I think this Cannon version will actually be better for ladder than the Inferno Tower, especially because you're going to see a lot of graveyard on ladder to, and Inferno Tower doesn't do anything to Graveyard. You can place cannon behind your tower to defend Graveyard if you have to first off defense.
That's true. And it's so like methodical what you're doing here. It's kind of like, like I said earlier, it's kind of like rinse and repeat at this point, right?
Yeah, I mean, most Graveyard decks you saw in last meta, you're looking for like 2 or 3 big pushes for the game. Like you're looking for Bowler, and Ice Golem, and then Freeze, Graveyard. You're looking for that's a big push you gotta make. With this, you don't need that much elixir. You only need about 10 elixirs for one push, and that's just one cycle. So you don't need to put so much elixir into each Graveyard, which is really great.
Yeah, in a lot of ways, like if you can play smart defense, it seems like this deck kind of plays itself, in terms of, you're dropping Graveyard Poison, Yeah,
it's almost like, you remember the old Giant meta where it was Giant Poison, and sometimes they wouldn't even get the Giant to your tower, they would just poison you down. It's like the same concept with this. You just place a Graveyard, and sometimes I'm not even trying to get damage with the Graveyard, I'm just trying to get them to place troops to defend it and then poison.
Yeah, man, well...
Because I can do that so many times during the game.
Well played, man. Thanks for sharing the deck with us. It seems like a super fun one to play. I'm gonna start playing it as soon as I stop this recording right now. It seems pretty cool. Is there any shout outs or anything like that? Any way people can contact you that you want to share before we let you go?
Twitter, Johnny C Royale, Johnny_C Royale, and then my Facebook is Johnny C Royale. So that's all I have at the moment.
Awesome, man. Well, I'm going to go ahead and include both of those in the description. You guys know where to find them. And again, man, thanks for coming on and giving us a little strategy advice for this deck, man. Really appreciate it.
It's a pleasure, Ash. Thanks for having me.
All right, take it easy, man. All right, guys, that's going to do it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching. And also a huge shout out to my YouTube partner. You can see him that way on the other side of the screen, Bren Chong. Be sure to follow him on Twitter and on Instagram. You'll see the links in my channel below. Special thanks to Bren for everything he does for the Clash Royale community. Guys, I'm out. Take care. And remember, I got your back.